Gilda, let me thank you very much for hosting the event, and thank everybody for coming. My voice is a little rough, so what I'd like to do, and I'm going to be speaking hopefully to a few thousand people in a little bit of a while. What I would like to do, for my edification, I don't want to give you a speech, I give enough speeches. What I would like to do is have a frank discussion, if I could, and ask you a very simple question. The reason I am in Louisiana today, and why I was in Texas last week, and why, God help me, in the middle of August I'm going to be in Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina. That is not the smartest thing, but why am I doing that? Why am I going to states that are all Republican?
Because that's where the poor people are.
All right. That's a good start.
That's where we need the help.
Because everybody counts.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
The weather here this time of year.
That's right. You're absolutely, I'm going to get out of Vermont, where it's nice and cool, and come to Louisiana. You're right. That's why I'm here. All right.
We have the biggest idiot for governor.
I think I wanted to see that. All right. The reason I asked the question is one of the things that we hope to accomplish in this campaign, of many, is to raise fundamental questions that are not being asked. Now, the reason I am going to these conservative states is I think the Democrats have made a tragic mistake in essentially abdicating their That's number one. I don't know how you are a national political party if you're not competing in 50 states.
That's right.
So what politics has become is the Democrats have abdicated literally, somewhere around half the states in this country. They control a number of states and they fight for 8 or 9 battleground states. That's politics in America. So that seems to me to be fairly stupid. But the second part is that many of the states that the Democrats have abdicated are some of the poorest states in America. All right, I could understand if there's really an affluent state someplace and all the rich people were going to vote Republican, fine. That is not, I think, the case in Louisiana, or am I missing something here? All right, you got a state with massive amounts of poverty, with huge numbers of people who have no health insurance, right?
Yes.
Where people are making abysmally low wages, right?
Yes.
So how do you abdicate your presence in a state like this and give it over to the Republicans?
Thank you.
I don't know. All right, now the second question, and I know this gets into race issues and everything else, but let's have a frank discussion. The other thing that I don't understand is how in states where there is so much poverty, where wages are so low, why Republicans control those states. All right, I want some answers. Help me out.
Southern strategy.
All right, tell me about the Southern strategy.
That's
Where did you?
Lee Atwater, right?
All right, stand up and tell people about the Southern
Oh,
strategy. Well, let's
But
talk.
from what I
Yeah,
have
come here, come
read-
next to me.
my
Come on, let's go.
I'm really shy. From what I understand, Lee Atwater's campaign philosophy was that if you can convince the lowest of the white population that they're better off than anyone else, then they will vote for you.
Okay.
And I read an interesting Atwater story too. Apparently, right before he died, he found Jesus. But after he died, they found a Bible in his room that was totally unopened. His conversion was quick.
All right, but what about that? What about, and how do you counteract that?
Divide and conquer and people feeling that they
All
don't.
right, divide, all right, speak up. What's your name?
Heidi Sinclair. So
Okay, Heidi.
divide
speak
and
up.
conquer, and also people feeling like they don't have a voice or a say in politics. A lot
All right,
of
let me just pose that. Let me pick up on that
Take
point.
those divisions and just rip them right down.
Let me just, I need your help on this one. I'm a politician and I've run for office many, many times. If I were the governor of Louisiana and if the federal government provided free expansion of Medicaid, so I don't know how many people, does anyone know the number here? How many?
577,000.
How much, 250?
577,000 according to the Department of Health and Hospitals.
All right, 577, okay. I've got an
Of
auctioneer here.
which 250,000 are working people.
Okay. So if I were a governor of a state and I had the opportunity to provide free health insurance. It didn't cost me a nickel because it's federal money, for 3 years and then a little bit less later on. For 500,000 people. Whatever my view might be of the federal government, Medicaid, I would be pretty nervous about rejecting that offer. Because I would think the 500,000 people would say, excuse me, my kids need health care, and you just rejected it, you're getting booted out of here. How could it happen that somebody gets away with this? Who wants to help me out on this? Yes, sir.
It's 20 years of no Democratic messaging in Louisiana.
Tied
Tied to that concentration in the battleground states.
And it's also racism. Because
It's all predicated on fear.
Obama, and when I go out into the poor areas and they tell me, well, my hospital's being closed, the clinic's being closed, they say it's because of that darn Obama.
Right.
I said, no, it's not.
All right, so what I'm hearing, some interesting points. Okay. Is there not much, is the average person not hearing a progressive message in Louisiana?
Lack of knowledge, yes. Lack of knowledge. I would say in my age group, 20s to 30s, most people's political party affiliation is based on how they grew up.
Cradle
If their parents are Republicans, they're Republican. And they couldn't even tell you why they vote that way. They just know, I don't know, my mama votes red, I vote red. And I think it's lack of knowledge across the board.
And that's all predicated on fear. You're afraid to change, you're afraid to take and do this, take a challenge, and so you take and stay with what is known instead of taking the biggest difference between the GOP and the Democrats is the GOP feeds on fear and allows it to control everything. The Democratic Party says, okay, there's fear out there, but there's nothing to fear from fear except fear itself. We accept that, we move on. But that doesn't get heard in most of these communities because fear is all you know.
Fear is a lie.
Across the radio spectrum in South Louisiana, all you hear is conservative radio talk show. No liberal.
Yes.
No liberal, just conservative radio talk. You know? And our message is not getting to the grassroots.
There's also the idea that,
One at a time, please.
I'm sorry, there's also the idea that white people who are lower middle class, poor, working people do not see themselves in that light. They see themselves as temporarily disenfranchised millionaires. And it's not an idea that's original to me, but everybody thinks they're just that one lottery ticket or one lucky strike away from striking it rich, and so the empathy isn't with the people who are working hard and barely making it. The empathy is with their people, the people with all the money.
Louisiana's Republicans here are also very pro-life until the child is born. After the child is born, they don't give a damn. They aren't interested in education
but they're not even for prenatal care.
No.
They're not even for pre-K.
It's not that bad. They don't want the government in their government.
But it's not that bad because when you look at even in the reddest red states, you still have 35, 40%, 45% who are Democrat. So, you know, when they say it's a landslide in a red state, that's only like 10%. And so the rest of us feel like we're just being ignored and forgotten. And it's actually a pretty large minority there.
Do the national Democrats pay much attention to these?
No. That's why I'm shocked you're here.
Why would I be shocked to being in New Jersey? This is New Jersey. Plainton, Louisiana, all right.
So, Bernie, let me give you an example. Co-workers of mine don't have a lot of money. Lower middle class working.
They think they got a lot of money.
No, they don't. They don't think they have a lot of money, actually. So I was talking to them about healthcare and this, that, and the other thing, and you know, support and substance and that sort of stuff. And their complaint was, the trouble with healthcare is we're giving too much to the blacks, and they're taking it away from me. It's not all of us, it's us and them. And that's the attitude we see all the time. It's not we're all in this together. It's those people, and they always use the those people, right? Those people are taking it away from me.
Nailed it.
Yeah, more discussion. Who hasn't participated yet? That's a very good point. Yes, ma'am.
Bernie, I'm the food stamp lady.
Okay.
I work for SNAP. And I will tell you that we're required with every person who applies, even if they just call to say hello, to ask them, are you a registered voter? Can I assist you in registering to vote? And the majority of them say, no, thank you. And I think to address that problem, but also I can tell you, the people you think are getting food stamps are not the people.
That's right.
And there's a lot of working people out there getting food stamps. I have to say probably 75% of the people I talk to have some type of job. So, but they have no regard for voting. You have totally lost them.
But they also are afraid to go vote. In my town, in
Here, come here, come here, come here, come here, come here.
they're afraid to vote.
Can you all hear her?
Yes.
Okay, be as loud as you can.
They're afraid to vote. In my town, they have to go to the courthouse and go through security. I was privileged to take someone to his first time to vote, and his only time to vote because he died later. But they made him go through security 3 times. And
What do you mean go through security?
to go vote. They have to go vote in the city courthouse to go through security.
Oh, I see.
So they're frightened to vote. But they have changed it so that their voting place is in this giant courthouse. And they have to walk up and go through security.
Just one of many deterrents to voting.
And if you have a district that is geared Democrat, that's where their arrest records are the highest. Because they want to arrest them and get them to where they can vote.
You think that's intentional?
Intentional, absolutely. I work in the prison system, it's intentional.
Yeah. You know, I can tell you what we're thinking of doing. We have a lot of pieces of legislation and ideas we're going to introduce during the campaign. But as many of you know, apropos voting rights, we are way, way, way behind other countries in that regard.
Yes.
So we are going to introduce legislation. We haven't finished it completely, but essentially say that if you're 18 years of age in the United States of America, you are registered to vote. Perfect. And other countries do that to varying degrees. But it's interesting to hear that so many years after the Civil Rights Act, that there is still intimidation and fear.
All the time.
Do people, let's stay on that point.
All minorities.
It's an open secret.
Do people actually, you know, those of us who vote, and we all vote, it's not a big deal. But what I'm hearing you say, for new voters, there is a fear element to register and so forth.
All ages.
All ages.
This man was an old man, had never voted, came from a family of 13, and he was an amazing individual, and he got to vote for the first time for Obama.
Do people agree? Your name is?
Sally Dunn.
People agree with Sally on that?
Absolutely.
Give me some other examples of fear in voting.
Some of them are goofy, but my family, I'm the only person in my whole family who's ever voted. And my parents had this idea that that's why they get picked for jury duty if you vote. Like, a lot of people have, a lot of people have other things that if my name is in this system, or I don't like that, I don't want it in there.
Fear of government. Wow. Isn't that interesting?
There's another one back
Yes,
here.
yes, ma'am.
Just the idea that it won't matter.
Yeah.
That's a big one here.
They all take care of it anyway, what difference does it make if I go?
They're jaded.
Yes.
Both parties
Or
are
if
the
you're a
same.
Democrat, you hear a lot of like, well, what is my vote going to matter anyway? We vote red all the time. There's no point in voting.
Yes, sir.
I had a student.
Okay.
We haven't
I
mentioned
had-
Yes, ma'am.
I had a student I was teaching in Florida at the time, and it was during the 2008 election. And so then I would have the TV on CNN. I was teaching English literature.
Can everybody come here?
I was teaching English literature. And so then I asked the students, I said, well, aren't you excited that we might get a black president? Because it was at an alternative school. And I literally had some students, one student in particular, very bright young man, but he was like, it's not going to make a difference. Him being president is not going to make a difference in my community. And that was his sincere feeling. And it was hard to wrestle with that.
That's not fair, but it's the same sort of thing that keeps people away.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't, I think that's, I'm sure there are people who are afraid, I'm not disagreeing. But a big factor is people don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Well, when you look at tax breaks alone, like the lower income people are fed this lie that tax breaks help us. Like the mortgage tax break. Okay, yeah, that's amazing that I can claim a tax break, but I have to make it more than my standard deduction. So my little mortgage does not even make it more than what my standard deduction is. So someone who has a $3 million house, of course they can get this nice tax break. But we're fed that this mortgage tax break was for middle class.
Do
And it
people
really
here
wasn't.
have any clue what goes on in Washington D.C.?
No, not really.
I mean, for example, I'll give you an example. We'll probably talk about it tonight. I'm the ranking member, the leader of the opposition on the budget committee. I represent the Democrats.
Oh, wow.
I'd rather be chairman of it, but all right. Here was what the Republican budget. Now, the budget is the foundation to which the appropriations committees go forward. This is the truth, no exaggeration here. This is what the Republican budget, which passed House and Senate, did. It ended the Affordable Care Act and made $400+ billion cuts in Medicaid over a 10-year period. The result, 27 million people were thrown off of health insurance.
That's Ryan.
Anybody know that here?
Is that Paul
Some
Ryan?
people did, yeah. Then what they did is they cut Pell Grants by $90 billion. Talk about food stamps, they made massive cuts in nutrition programs, food stamps, the WIC program, and other programs. And then what they did is gave $250 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. What percentage of working class Republicans do you think know that?
No.
Yeah. So one of the things that happens is the Republicans in Washington at least can do anything they want with the full understanding that cutting Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid, no one's going to know it. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, sir. Yeah.
But Bernie, I think the overarching thing is the fact that it's a lack of education.
Absolutely.
Because if you have the ability to think, you can understand better, and then therefore you do better. In the majority of this state, we don't have access to quality education. Now, I'm a candidate this year for state representative of District 83, and that's a majority, 57% majority African American. And one of the
Come on up here. Come on.
Get Kyle.
And that's why Paiush has done nothing but cut education. Keep them ignorant.
It's hard to control educated populace.
Y'all are a beautiful couple.
And so one of the issues that I was talking to one of my, hopefully constituents, was that she was talking to me. She's a white girl. She's about 30 years old. She barely had a high school education, but she had 3 kids. All of them were in Head Start. They all were on Medicaid. And I asked her, a couple years ago, how are you going to vote in a 2012 presidential election? I'm not voting for Obama because he's going to cut my child's Head Start funding and Medicaid. And I was taken aback. I was like, Amber, are you serious? The Democratic Party is a very party trying to give you those incentives, not take them away like the Republican Party, but unfortunately, like you would say before, the Republicans have done a very good job at messaging. We have not. They've done a good job at going on offense. We've been playing defense.
Their propaganda machine makes Hitler look like a schoolboy.
It's like they want us to die.
Down here, because people are in poverty. We have one of the highest rates of poverty in the country. People are worried about how they're going to feed their children, how they're going to keep their lights on. It's not their job to really understand the inner workings of what's going on in Washington. That's their leaders' job. And we don't have leaders coming down here and giving these facts to them, telling them about Obamacare, telling them about health care, telling them they're afraid to take these votes that they know are in the best interest of their districts because they're afraid of what's going to happen as a result.
It's also hard to learn when you're working 40 hours a week.
No, that's a good.
Right.
Yeah, come on, good.
Oh no, I'm not.
No.
To also expand upon that, it has not just been Republicans' fault. It's also been Democrats' fault.
Yes.
Because in my district, 57% majority African American. My district voted to re-elect Mary Landry with 80% of the vote. My district voted 70% to re-elect Barack Obama. My district also, 1 out of every 3 African Americans between the ages of 19 and 64 are without health care.
1 out of 3.
1 out of 3. Okay? 1 out of 4 is everybody. Okay? The incumbent in that seat right now did not vote to expand Medicaid. He also voted for
Democrat?
Yes. He also voted for a bill in 2010 that would have prohibited the federal government from mandating that the people of the state of, in this state be required to get health care through the exchange. That's blatantly unconstitutional. He voted for that. Then when I asked him about it, he said, well, Kyle, are you aware that some people just don't want it? You know?
All right, I want to get, all right, you made a good point.
Well, no, it's just that, when you're working 40, even 60 hours a week and then you have kids at home and whatnot, you just don't have time. So the most that you see are just the headlines that run across the news that are real quick and what they tell you. It's mostly just, and it's mostly just, shooting here or whatever.
Right,
You don't
exactly,
have time to learn what's going on.
Also,
Yes, ma'am.
some of the people in the rural areas of this state don't have access to the internet.
That's right.
And Bobby Jindal refused money for them to get internet access from the federal government. He refused that money. So some of these people have no
access to
information.
And that's not just rural, it's urban too.
Is that what they do get is a lot of right-wing radio, Rush Limbaugh and all those guys?
Yep, they get that all day.
Fox
News. Yes, ma'am.
She wants to answer.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, can I ask you a question on a completely different topic?
Yes.
How is it that you have an A+ rating from the NRA?
That's a good example of a lie.
Good, I'm glad.
Where did you see that? On the internet or something?
I'm sorry?
No, you don't. Where did you see that?
Probably on Facebook.
I have a D to F rating from the But here's an example. But that's just the fact. It's D to F. But here is the facts. And I was on Meet the Press this morning. That's what I was. Yes, talking about. In my state, we are a very rural state, and thank God the crime rate is reasonably low. But most of our people have guns, and the guns are used for hunting, used for target practice. That's how they're used. And we have no.
And the people that know that are the people that are frightened of them because they live in a house.
But if we're going to have a frank conversation, you can go on Facebook on Metairie's garage sale, and people are selling guns for anybody to go get. It's such easily accessible for anyone to get.
If it's not legal here, they won't,
Yeah.
Okay, other thoughts from people who haven't made the first comment? Yeah.
I think it's important to stay on core messages. One of the messaging problem in this environment is really significant, because when you look at the Democratic Party history, the Democratic Party has delivered important kitchen table economic issues to people that aren't being talked about. Social Security was delivered by the Democrats over the protestations of the Republicans.
Right.
The GI Bill was delivered by the Democrats over the protestations of big business.
Right.
Medicare, Medicaid was delivered by the Democrats. The messaging out of Washington is getting distracted on things like these cultural issues, one of which is guns, and not focusing on the core economic issues. That's one of the reasons, including equality of opportunity and educational opportunities, that makes your campaign so important, and why I appreciate it so much, because you're bringing attention to these core economic opportunity
thank you, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. I'll give you an example. How would the people of Louisiana vote if there was an issue on the ballot to raise the minimum wage over a period of a few years to $15 an hour? People support that?
No.
I don't think overwhelmingly. Okay. How would the people vote to make public colleges and universities tuition free?
They would vote against it.
This room would vote for it. Everyone else would vote for it.
You've got people, you're talking to
People, the
in
state would
room
take
who
them
are
vote
like, yes,
for it if they would
absolutely.
vote, but the ones that actually show up to vote will
if-
vote
if
against
somebody-
it.
If somebody who's working a minimum wage job is afraid that they will no longer have that job, what would they rather have? Would they rather have $7.25 an hour? Or would they rather have nothing?
And that's
that's the
what's posed to them.
messaging that's going to go
The
out.
message that's sent here in Louisiana is also, even if they raise minimum wage, well, everything else is going to skyrocket anyway, so it's going to be like I'm back working at $6 an hour because all the prices.
But that is not the experience, and that's not the truth.
But that's what we hear.
Okay, good, got it.
And unemployment. Bobby Jindal goes around the country boasting about his low unemployment in Louisiana. My wife, after 40-something years in IT, found herself unemployed. And She tried to file for unemployment and struggled. It's all online. It's intentionally very difficult to apply for. There's no unemployment office for illiterate people to go in and file. So yes, unemployment is low because people aren't filing for it. They can't. He blocks them from filing for it.
And there are no offices in smaller towns. Thank you all the work you've done for community health centers. I'm a member of a community health center in the Franklin area, and thank you so much.
Are they active here in Louisiana?
Yeah, through the Louisiana Primary Care Association, yes.
But one of the things that we did, you know, I won't go into a whole song and dance about the disastrous nature of American healthcare, but one of the things that I worked very hard on in the Affordable Care Act is to greatly expand community health centers. And in my state, actually about 25% of the people now get their primary health care. And we get dental care, and you get mental health counseling, and you get low-cost prescription drugs. So I'm glad to hear that they have it.
People in this room will say, yeah, I know all about that. But if I do a little straw poll on Facebook and say, do people know this is happening? People who I think are pretty smart and make pretty good decisions in life will say, I didn't hear about that. I didn't know that was happening, and that's a horrible idea. But it's already too late by the time.
One of the issues that is a huge issue that is almost by definition not talked about, and that is the role of media in this country.
Yes.
And the role that corporate media plays very significantly is deflecting attention away from the most important issues. So I think somebody, you were talking about, there's an accident or something else will get a lot of attention, that will get the crawl space. And yet, let me give you some examples of issues of unbelievable consequence that almost get no discussion at all. About a year and a half ago, a couple of us in the Senate wrote to the heads of ABC, CBS, and NBC, and I think CNN, to say, you know, the scientists, we didn't waste too much of that. The scientists tell us that climate change is already causing devastating problems. And there's a study out there that you guys don't talk about climate change at all. So the guy from CBS actually came in, president of CBS. But here's an example of what the scientist tells us is a world environmental crisis, almost not talked about at all. Or when it was talked about, well, there's a debate. He thinks it's real, he thinks it's not real. What do you think? There is no debate. All right, issue number one. Here's another issue, huge issue. You all know who the Koch brothers are?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, I need help on this one. If you have read an article or seen something on TV which tells you what the Koch brothers actually stand for. What do the Koch brothers want? What's their agenda? Anyone know?
Make themselves richer?
Political power.
All right. The answer is the Koch brothers will spend over $900 million in this election. That is more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party will spend. We don't know exactly what their agenda is, but we have a pretty good idea. In 1980, David Koch ran for Vice President of the United States on the Libertarian Party ticket. This is what his agenda was. Eliminate, end Social Security, end Medicare, end Medicaid, end the U.S. Postal Service, end the Environmental Protection Agency, end nutrition programs, end public education in America. Now, that was 35 years ago. Have they changed their views? Maybe, but I don't know that they have. So the point is, you have the second wealthiest family in America spending more money than the Democrats and Republicans, basically on an agenda that will end every program passed in the last 75 years to help working people. Have you seen that article in the papers yet?
No,
Okay.
but it's on Facebook.
Yeah, it will get out in the alternative media, but it is not discussed terribly much. And that's what Citizens United has done. So what I am trying to do in this campaign, primarily, is to focus on those issues that mean the most to working families. And what are those issues?
Education.
First of all, we have to realize that while the economy today, and I know Bobby Jindal will take credit for every Republican will take credit, the economy today is much better than it was when Bush left office. The fact is that the average American today is working longer hours for lower wages than was the case 30 or 40 years ago. All right?
Paid maternity leave, please.
All right, that's one thing. So how does it happen that in the richest country in the history of the world, the average person is working longer hours for low wages? We don't have to answer it, but that is the question we should be debating as a nation. If I give you a tool and new technology and you're producing more, why are you earning less? Is that a good question? Okay. Why is it in the United States we have the highest rate of child poverty of any major country on earth? 20% of our kids are living in poverty. Why do we have more income and wealth inequality? You want to hear inequality? The top 1/10 of 1%, 1/10 of 1% owns as much wealth as the bottom 90%. 56% of all new income is going to the top 1% today. Is that an issue you think we might want to be discussing? Yes. What about corporations?